All right, so are you ready to dive into a world that most of us, I think, only hear whispers about?
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Indian tantric practices
Okay.
and the summoning of supernatural entities.
Right.
Our source material for this is an interview on a YouTube channel called The Real One,
Right.
and it's filled with personal anecdotes, practical advice, and some really mind-boggling claims.
Yeah. What I found really fascinating about this interview is the level of detail that the interviewee goes into.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't just, mention these entities in passing.
Yeah.
She describes their appearances, their personalities, and even the rituals used to summon them.
Exactly. And one of the most intriguing aspects for me is this whole concept of yakshinis.
Yeah.
These aren't your typical fairy tale creatures.
Right.
They're powerful beings with a whole range of abilities, some benevolent and some not so much.
Yeah, and she really paints a vivid picture of them.
Yeah.
Like, for example, she describes the Padmini Yakshini, who's said to be incredibly beautiful,
Oh, wow.
but with green skin.
Green skin.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay, I'm hooked already.
It's a striking image that really highlights how otherworldly these beings are.
So it sounds like there's a whole hierarchy or a whole ecosystem of these yakshinis,
Absolutely.
each with their own purpose or domain.
Yeah. Some are associated with wealth and prosperity,
Okay.
like the Rakt Yakshini, who's said to be really powerful but also dangerous to summon.
Mm-hmm.
Others are linked to knowledge protection or even darker arts like black magic.
Okay, so then that brings up the question of how do you actually go about summoning these entities?
Right.
Is it like something out of a movie, with chanting and candles?
It's actually a lot more involved than that.
Okay.
She describes a process called sadhana,
Okay.
which is a ritual that lasts for 21 days
Oh, wow.
and requires intense focus and discipline.
Wow, 21 days. That's quite a commitment.
Yeah, it involves specific chants, meditation techniques, and even offerings.
It sounds like you're not just dipping your toes in the water here. You are diving headfirst.
Yeah.
You are fully committed.
Yeah, and there are different levels of sadhana, too.
Okay.
Sukshma sadhana is said to focus on subtler energies and may lead to encounters with these entities in a more ethereal form.
Uh-huh.
But then there's Stula sadhana, which aims for a full-blown physical manifestation of the entity.
Wow, a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
That's when things start to get a little creepy for me.
Yeah.
But is it as simple as just following the steps of a ritual? Like, what about intention?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because she emphasizes that intention is crucial.
Okay.
She's very clear that she's against using any of these practices for harm, especially black magic.
So even though there are rituals for things like acquiring wealth,
Right.
she's saying it's not just about getting what you want.
Yeah.
There's a moral and ethical dimension to consider.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And she even refuses to perform certain rituals for clients, even when offered large sums of money.
Really?
One example that she gives is a ritual involving the sacrifice of 2 black roosters. It's a very graphic description.
Yeah.
And she's adamant about the potential dangers of performing such rituals incorrectly or with the wrong intentions.
So it sounds like there's a real sense of responsibility that comes with this knowledge.
Yes.
You're not just playing with mystical forces.
Right.
You are interacting with powerful beings who demand respect
Uh-huh.
and who have their own agendas.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway here.
Yeah.
It's about the power dynamic between the practitioner and the summoned entity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a master-slave relationship.
Okay.
It's more like a negotiation or even a partnership.
And there are consequences if you don't hold up your end of the bargain.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what kind of consequences are we talking?
Well, she mentions things like illness, mental torture, and even death as potential outcomes.
Oh, wow.
If you fail to fulfill the entity's desires or break the vows that they often require.
The vow's like an actual contract.
Yeah, she says that Yakshinis make practitioners take 3 specific vows.
Okay.
To always speak the truth, never refuse their desires, and never reveal their secrets.
Wow, imagine living under those conditions.
Oh, no.
It sounds very intense, like you're entering into a whole other realm of existence with its own set of rules and potential dangers.
Right.
But what about the positive side of all of this?
Okay.
I know the outline mentions spiritual awakening and personal transformation.
Yes, that's another layer to this whole fascinating world.
Yeah.
Despite the risks and the darkness, she also shares experiences of profound spiritual growth.
Okay.
And the insights that she gained through these practices.
Mm-hmm.
She describes encountering a Kankpasakni,
Okay.
which is a being that's often depicted as quite fearsome. But in her experience, it actually helped to deepen her practice and understanding of the universe.
So even the most potentially scary entities might actually have a role to play in spiritual development.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that things aren't always black and white, especially when you're dealing with the supernatural.
Okay, now my mind is truly blown, but I have to ask, how do you even perceive these entities? Do you need some kind of special ability?
Well, she touches on this
Okay.
and suggests the third eye, often associated with clairvoyance and the ability to perceive subtle energies,
Right.
plays a key role in seeing and interacting with the
So
supernatural.
it's not just about believing or not believing. There might be a physiological component to it as well.
Potentially.
But can anyone develop this third eye, or is it something you're born with?
Well, she really emphasizes the power of meditation and self-purification
Okay.
to awaken the third eye.
So she believes that anyone with dedication and the right practices can develop this ability to perceive the unseen.
Exactly.
It really makes you wonder if there's a whole world out there that most of us are just blind to.
Yeah,
And if so, what are the implications of that?
right.
Is this something we should be afraid of, or is this something we should embrace?
That's a question worth exploring further.
For sure.
But what's clear is that this interview challenges us to consider the limits of our own perception and the possibility of a reality that extends far beyond what we can see and touch.
Speaking of things beyond our normal perception,
Okay.
the interviewee also mentions encountering the Illuminati in connection with these practices.
Yeah,
Now, that's a pretty wild leap, isn't it?
it is.
I mean, are we suggesting that ancient spiritual practices might be connected to modern-day power structures?
It's a bold claim.
Yeah.
And we are dealing with just one person's perspective here.
Right.
But it does raise some intriguing questions about the potential intersection of the spiritual and the political.
Okay, my head is officially spinning.
I know.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
Yakshini's rituals, spiritual awakening, even the Illuminati.
And we're just getting started.
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot more to unpack in this interview,
Okay.
including her personal experiences with these entities
Yeah.
and the potential dangers involved.
This is definitely a deep dive I'm glad we're taking together.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to process what we've learned so far, and we'll be right back to delve even deeper into the world of Indian Tantra and the summoning of supernatural entities.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, before the break, we were talking about the power dynamics between practitioners and these entities and how it's not as simple as just, bossing them around.
Right. It's definitely more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
It's more like a delicate dance. And
Yeah.
a big part of that dance, according to the interviewee, is understanding the concept of karma.
Karma, as in what goes around comes around.
Exactly.
Okay.
She believes that both the practitioner and the person requesting a ritual, especially a harmful one, will face karmic consequences.
So it's not just about, avoiding punishment from the entity itself,
No.
but there's a deeper spiritual law at play here.
Right. It's not just about, trying to avoid getting in trouble.
Mhm.
It's about a deeper understanding of how your actions ripple out into the universe.
So even if you manage to manipulate these entities for selfish gain, there's a cosmic price to pay in the end.
There is, and that's why she repeatedly emphasizes the importance of aligning your actions with your spiritual values.
So it's not just about achieving a specific goal.
Right.
It's about personal transformation and aligning yourself with a higher purpose.
Exactly. And that makes me think about her point about how even the scariest entities might have a role to play in our spiritual development.
Right.
Maybe it's through facing those challenges and those fears that we truly grow.
It's like the darker aspects of this world aren't necessarily there to harm us,
Right.
but to push us to confront our own limitations and evolve.
Exactly. And what strikes me is her honesty about her own struggles.
Yeah.
She doesn't portray herself as some kind of infallible guru.
Mm-hmm.
She openly shares her mistakes and the lessons she's learned along the way.
Which I think makes the whole subject feel a little less intimidating and
Right.
a little bit more accessible.
Yes,
Because
definitely.
it's like, even someone who is deeply immersed in this world still faces challenges and has to constantly learn and adapt.
Absolutely. It reminds us that this isn't about achieving some kind of superhuman status.
Right.
It's about continuous self-discovery and growth.
Speaking of self-discovery,
Yeah.
I'm really curious about her perspective on gender differences in this field.
Okay.
Because she mentions that women might have a natural advantage when it comes to intuition and connecting with these entities.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any truth to that, or is it just a cultural belief?
Well, it's a complex question for sure, and one that's often gets tangled up with societal biases.
Mm-hmm.
But she offers a perspective that goes beyond traditional stereotypes.
Okay.
She talks about this sixth layer,
Hmm.
which she believes is an energy center that's more active in women and contributes to their heightened intuition.
I'm not sure about the science behind that.
Right.
But it is interesting that she's drawing on both traditional wisdom and a more, well, I guess you could say, energetic model of the human body to
Yes.
explain this difference.
And it really raises the question, even if you don't subscribe to the idea of energy centers,
Yeah.
could there be something to the observation itself?
Yeah.
Like, has her experience shown her a pattern of women exhibiting stronger intuitive abilities in this realm?
It's definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
Even if we set aside the why for now,
Right.
it's fascinating to think about the potential implications. Like, could it be that women have been historically drawn to these practices because of a natural affinity for this type of work?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility.
Okay.
And it leads us to think about how gender roles and expectations might influence how we approach and experience the supernatural.
For sure. It's a reminder that we're not just dealing with otherworldly entities here.
Right.
We're also dealing with very human perceptions and experiences.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of human experiences, we have to revisit her claims about encountering the Illuminati.
Right. It's such a jarring juxtaposition, isn't it?
It is.
Ancient spiritual practices and modern power structures.
It's almost too much to take in. Like, what do you make of it?
Well, she doesn't give us a lot to go on.
Okay.
But what I find fascinating is the implication that these ancient practices might be used for more than just personal gain or spiritual development.
So what if someone or some group is trying to harness these entities for power or control?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she even describes an incident where she was targeted by a powerful entity,
Oh, wow.
possibly at the behest of someone involved with the Illuminati.
That's kind of terrifying
It is.
because it suggests that there are real dangers involved,
Right.
even for someone who's trying to use these practices for good.
Yeah, and it makes her emphasis on spiritual protection all the more important.
So she talks about things like creating circles of protection, using specific mantras, and cultivating inner strength as ways to safeguard yourself from harm.
Right. It's not just about physical safety.
Mm-hmm.
It's about safeguarding your mind and spirit as well.
So it brings us back to the importance of self-awareness
Yes.
and aligning your actions with your values.
Exactly. It's like the more you're rooted in your own truth,
Yeah.
the less likely you are to be swayed by negative forces,
Right.
whether they come from powerful entities or from other people.
This is a lot to process. It's like we're peeling back layers of reality
Wow.
and uncovering a world that is both fascinating and frightening.
It is.
Huh.
And it's a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge, especially knowledge about the unseen world, comes with responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just acquiring information. You're stepping into a realm with its own rules and consequences.
And it makes me think, even if you don't necessarily believe in Yakshinis or the Illuminati,
Right.
there are still some valuable lessons here about the importance of intention, self-mastery, and aligning your actions with your values.
I agree. This deep dive has challenged us to think beyond our everyday perceptions and consider the possibility of a reality that's far more complex and mysterious than we might have imagined.
And we're not done yet.
Not even close.
There's still so much more to explore in this interview. Like, what other personal experiences has she had, and what advice does she offer for those who are curious about these practices?
We'll delve into all of that and more when we return for the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last two segments, exploring a world that most of us only glimpse in stories.
Right.
This world of Indian Tantric practices and the summoning of supernatural entities.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has.
I mean, we've talked about everything from green-skinned Yakshinis to shadowy Illuminati figures.
I know, it's a lot.
And yet, what continues to stand out for me is this interviewee's emphasis on self-discovery and spiritual growth.
I agree with that. It's like, even in a world where you could potentially summon a being to grant your wishes, the most important journey is the one that you take within yourself.
I think that's a really powerful insight.
Yeah.
And one that kind of weaves through this whole interview is this idea that, our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
Not just, in the physical world,
Mm-hmm.
but on this deeper karmic level.
Right, like that whole concept of Pitradosh.
Yeah.
Ancestral curses.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It is a little bit to think that our ancestors could be influencing our lives from beyond the grave.
It is, but I think her take on it is actually quite empowering
Okay.
because she believes that rather than, trying to appease potentially malevolent ancestors through rituals,
Right.
it's far more effective to focus on positive deeds and spiritual development.
So it's not about being a slave to fate or fearing the past. It's
Yeah.
about taking control of your present actions and shaping your own destiny.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the power of meditation.
Right.
She describes it as a way to purify the mind, connect with your inner self, and even develop the ability to perceive subtle energies.
She makes it sound like meditation isn't just some new age trend.
Right.
It's like a powerful tool for navigating both the seen and unseen worlds.
Absolutely. And it aligns with, this recurring theme of self-mastery.
Yeah.
She seems to suggest that the more you cultivate inner strength and awareness,
Right.
the more equipped you are to handle the challenges and temptations that come with exploring the supernatural.
It's almost like she's saying that true power doesn't come from controlling external forces,
Right.
but from mastering your own mind
Uh-huh.
and aligning your actions with your deepest values.
I think that's a really powerful insight and one that resonates even if you don't subscribe to all of the specific beliefs outlined in this interview.
For sure. It's like whether you're dealing with supernatural entities or just the everyday stresses of life,
Yeah.
the ability to stay grounded, centered, and true to yourself is invaluable.
I completely agree. And, another thing that's really stayed with me is her courage and resilience.
Yeah.
She doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of this world. She shares her own experiences with negative entities and even this chilling encounter with the group she believes to be the Illuminati.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the allure of the supernatural, but she reminds us that there are some real risks involved.
Exactly. And it makes her emphasis on spiritual protection all the more important.
Yeah.
She talks about things like creating circles of protection, using specific mantras, and cultivating inner strength as ways to safeguard yourself from harm.
So even if you're drawn to exploring this realm, you need to do so with, a healthy dose of caution
Yes,
and respect for the forces at play.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And she doesn't present any of this as dogma.
Right.
She really encourages listeners to question everything, explore these ideas for themselves,
Yeah.
and ultimately come to their own conclusions.
I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly accepting someone else's beliefs.
Right.
It's about expanding your own understanding of what's possible
Uh-huh.
and finding your own truth.
Beautifully put. And as we wrap up this episode, I'm left with this sense of wonder and a healthy dose of respect for this unseen world.
Yeah.
And I think whether you believe in, Yakshinis and the Illuminati or not,
Right.
there's a lot to ponder here.
Yeah.
About the nature of reality, the power of intention, and the importance of living a life that's aligned with your values.
Well said. This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, it has.
So as we wrap up, is there one question that you would like our listeners to walk away with today?
Maybe if we accept the possibility of a world that exists beyond our normal perception, how might that change the way we live our lives?
That is a great question, and I think it perfectly captures the spirit of the deep dive to challenge our assumptions, explore new perspectives, and maybe even discover a little magic along the way.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.